Welcome to this explainer. What if I told you there's a hidden blueprint literally hiding in plain sight? From the mystics of ancient India all the way to cutting edge neuroscience. They're actually all pointing to the exact same way of living. Today, we're going to decode that 360-degree holistic operating manual, mapping out your human experience from the second you wake up all the way to the moment you fall asleep.
Let's challenge your current waking reality for a second. Are you merely reacting to life, just kind of being dragged around by your circumstances and stressors, or are you consciously driving your human avatar? See, most of us live our entire lives on autopilot, suffering through a local program of our own creation. But what if you could step back and, master the very render of your reality?
So here's our agenda. We're covering 1. The universal pattern. 2. Morning, grounding. 3. Midday, effortless action. 4. Evening, devotion. 5. Night, quantum void. And 6. The 24/7 laboratory. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The universal reality pattern.
Before we map out your day, we really have to establish the architecture of the universe. And the perennial philosophy hits the nail on the head here. It's honestly fascinating that whether you're looking at Advaita Vedanta, Islamic Sufism, or even modern Silicon Valley simulation theory, they all converge on this identical terminal truth. They all tell us that reality is an interconnected holographic projection. Beneath the apparent multiplicity, the separate objects, the different people, the daily grind, there's an undivided absolute reality. You are an intentional projection of a single, universal consciousness. And this beautifully illustrates how different traditions say the exact same thing. Ancient Buddhism calls the self emptiness, meaning it has no fixed nature. Modern neuroscience, specifically Carl Friston's free energy principle, calls it a predictive mind. To them, it's just a narrative model constantly updating via prediction errors to minimize surprise. Advaita Vedanta, they call the separate self Maya, or an illusion. So ancient mystics and modern brain scientists are using completely different vocabulary to tell you that the rigid you stressing out at work, it's literally an illusion. Think of the universe like a giant fractal. The massive cosmological scale perfectly mirrors the microcosm of your tiny 24-hour day. Just as this fractal pattern repeats at every single scale, the macrocosm of universal creation and destruction is reflected perfectly in the complete A to Z cycle of your morning, noon, and night.
Section 2. Morning, grounding the avatar.
Step 1 of your daily render begins in the morning. When you wake up, you're essentially booting up the human hardware. Sources across the board prescribe physical grounding right off the bat. We're talking movement, breath work, or specifically Kriya Yoga, using physical postures and breath control to firmly ground and charge the physical hardware of your avatar for the day ahead. Because let's face it, you can't master the simulation if you're neglecting the very vehicle you're driving.
Section 3. Midday, practicing effortless action. Now, as we hit the chaotic middle of your day, the goal shifts. The ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action, is all about aligning with reality rather than fighting it with your personal opinions of how things should be. And today, the HeartMath Institute has actually made this measurable as coherence. It's a state where our hearts, minds, and bodies are totally united in a measurable state of wholeness. Doing things effortlessly in the ancient Taoist sense is scientifically measurable today as physiological and emotional coherence. It's essentially the ultimate flow state.
But what happens when that inevitable workplace stress hits? Well, you've got a universal toolkit. You could use Ramana Maharshi's direct inquiry and ask, to whom does this stress arise? Or try the Indian saint Sai Baba's method of repeating a mantra to instantly tune your awareness back to the divine presence. Or even Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's modern mindfulness approach to halt what he calls selfing, that endless narrative of I, me, and mine running on a loop in your brain's default mode network. All of these tools do the exact same thing. They instantly detach you from the narrative of me so you can return to that state of effortless coherence.
Section 4. Evening, devotion, and coherence.
As the workday winds down, Western mystic Robert Adams echoes global traditions perfectly. Evening is the time for humility and handing over your burdens. You've done your part during the day. Now, you deliberately shift into a state of surrender, dissolving your ego through devoted prayer. Whether you call it God, the universe, or the source, the practice here is to trust that the universe is compassionate. You don't have to carry the weight of the whole world on your shoulders.
Now, what's really interesting here is how Western esoteric traditions took this very literally.
Practitioners would use Renaissance geometric seals during evening oratories to map the cosmic spheres, actively pulling that divine universal harmony down into their daily lives. They totally understood that the end of the day required a specific, intentional ritual to reconnect the human spirit with the macrocosm right before sleep. Section 5. Night. The quantum void. We finally arrive at night. The 14th century Christian mystic Meister Eckhart beautifully describes this process. He says that in sleep and nighttime meditation, the soul falls from its created somethingness back into its nothingness. Nighttime is just a complete surrender. You let go of your name, your job, your body, and your stress, completely falling back into the quiet, immovable stillness of the source.
Consider this bizarre, almost unbelievable crossover between quantum mechanics and ancient Indian scripture. Quantum wave collapse suggests that physical possibilities remain completely unrealized until an observer actually measures them. Well, the Yoga Vasistha says the exact same thing. The seer is the sight only. If there's no subject, there is no object. So closing your eyes at night is akin to a quantum wave collapse. When you remove yourself as the observer by going to sleep, the physical world essentially ceases to exist in your consciousness. You're completely powering down the render.
Section 6. Your 24/7 spiritual laboratory. Look, most people try to live this exhausting split personality. They're spiritual when they meditate, but totally stressed when they work. The true goal across all these sources is to collapse that duality entirely. You play your worldly role, caring for the avatar, while simultaneously remaining anchored as the source, the eternal observer. You're no longer trying to escape the material world. By viewing your entire life, from morning grounding to midday action to evening devotion and that nighttime void, as a 360-degree laboratory, you completely harmonize the avatar and the source. You literally live every single action as a sacred ritual.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. You now have the universal 24/7 operating manual that spans everything from ancient alchemy and Buddhism to modern neuroscience and quantum physics. The patterns are absolutely undeniable. So, will you continue to be blindly dragged through the motions of your day, just reacting to every single stressor? Or will you use these perennial blueprints to step off autopilot, integrate your life, and finally master your own reality? The choice is entirely yours.